Hi, I'm Dave Vickers and welcome to the Photo Show. In today's episode we're going to take a look at creating a panorama within Lightroom. Now, panorama is a really great way of combining a number of images to create one panoramic shot. Something that you couldn't do with just a single image. You just wouldn't get the scale of what you're looking for. So panoramas work really well. Now, Lightroom is a really great way of creating panoramas. It has a number of advantages over programs like Photoshop. First and foremost is that Lightroom can actually create panoramas directly from RAW files. Whereas with Photoshop, you'd have to process the RAW files in Camera Raw, bring them back into Photoshop and create your panorama from the JPEG. Also, once the panorama is created, you can actually work on it as a single image rather than the separate layers that you'd have within Photoshop. So let's take a look at how we're going to create this panorama. So I've basically picked 4 images here. They were taken in Pembrokeshire in Wales, and they're from the cliff top looking down over the beach and the hills. So I'll scroll through them. There's the first image, there's the second image, there's the third image, and there's the fourth image. You can see what I've done here is, as I've photographed it, I've left an overlap between each image. So you see on the first image we've got the hillside here. The second image, the hillside's further along. The house is overlapping from the second image, and in the fourth image the hills are overlapping from there. So there's an overlap that the program can actually work with. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select all 4 of these images that I have in the film strip at the bottom. So you can either hold down Control and click them all individually. So even easier, highlight the first image, hold down your Shift key, click on the fourth image or the last image, whatever one you've got, and that's now highlighted all 4 of those images. This is important, otherwise the panorama won't be able to work. It's got to know what files it's using. So while that's selected, come into your image and right click and you'll get a drop down list. Part way down here you have Photo Merge. Now we're looking for a panorama, so we click Panorama. There's a keyboard shortcut there of using Control and M or Command and M if you're on a Mac. So click there. Now this Panorama Merge dialog box will open up, and as you can see it says Creating Panorama Preview. There we go, it's made a panorama of combining those 4 images. Now if you're using a program like Photoshop, this is what you'd be left with. So you would have the edges here where the panorama has been adjusted so it doesn't quite fit the frame. But now we've got a number of options. We have a box here that we can tick that says Auto Crop. So if I tick that, you can see now that Lightroom has actually cropped the image so we don't have any of those spare white bits around the edge and the side. I'll untick that and put it back to where it was. So you can see we've got little areas above and to the edges of the image that the panorama hasn't quite filled. Auto Crop will fill that in for you. But you've also got another option here, which is Boundary Warp. So you can start to scroll that along and Lightroom will begin to fill in those gaps. So if we come all the way up to 100%, there we go. Lightroom has now filled in those gaps with information and cropping the image to create a complete panorama. So the next thing we do now is we click Merge. If you look up the top here, we've got a progress bar that says Lightroom is creating the panorama. So we'll just let that work through. Okay, so there we go. So now Lightroom has finished creating the panorama. And you can see now at the bottom here on our film strip, we've got our original 4 images and we have our panorama. So let's click and open that up. And there we go. Lightroom has made a really great job of combining those 4 images. Let's zoom in one to one. And we'll just scroll along. And you can see there are absolutely no visible joins on this panorama. Lightroom has done a fantastic job of stitching the 4 images together. Let's bring it back out. So what Lightroom has done now is created a separate file, this panorama file, that we can now edit as one image. Whereas in Photoshop you'd be editing the separate layers unless you merged it down. But to get some of the colours to match, you would have to work on each individual layer. But this is one image that we can now treat as a single JPEG image and work on. So let's come over to our develop module here. We'll come over to our basic module. And we can warm it up a little bit with the colour temperature. Let's add a little bit of contrast in as well. Let's drop our highlights down a touch. And let's open up the shadows. We're going to set a white point by holding down Alt and Option while we're clicking the slider, and we'll come along till we start to see some white appear in the image. We've got a couple of dots there. That'll be fine. We'll do the same with the blacks. Hold down your Alt or Option key and slide the slider to the left until we start to see some blacks appear in the image. So there we go. Now we set a black and a white point. Let's add a bit of clarity to that. And let's bring the vibrancy up a touch as well. So as you can see, we're actually working on this as a whole image. It's not working on the individual shots that we combined it with. It's working as one whole image. If I press the backslash key now, that's where our panorama started. That's where it's come to with a little bit of work. Let's carry on and do a little bit more here. Let's go down to our hue and saturation. So I'm going to click on our little button here and bring the slider in and just adjust the hue. Bring a little bit more blues into the sky there. Adjust the seas as well there. Go into the sand. Bring a little bit more red into the sea. And we can then move on to our saturation, and we'll do the same again. Let's saturate the sky a little bit more. And there we go. So really quickly, Lightroom has created a really beautiful panorama from the 4 individual images we had. So let's press our backslash key. That's where our panorama started. That's where we've ended up really quickly, from the point of doing the photo modes to doing a really quick edit in Lightroom. It's made a dramatic difference to what we originally started with. And considering we started with the 4 original files here, so these are the 4 original files that we had, and they're now combined to create a beautiful panorama. So I hope that's helped. That's how to create panoramas within Lightroom. I'm Dave Vickers. This is The Photo Show. Thanks for watching. See you next time.